It was 8:37 in the morning when the janitor dropped his notebook. The worn, brown cover hit the marble floor of the gleaming lobby, scattering a few loose pages. The sound echoed faintly, almost too small to notice, but enough to turn heads. Among those who noticed was Miranda Voss, the 34-year-old CEO of Voss Tech Industries, a billion-dollar startup that had grown faster than anyone in Silicon Valley had imagined. She stood there, her designer heels clicking on the tiles as she approached, her expression curious, then amused. She picked up the notebook, flipped through it, and laughed softly before tossing it onto a nearby counter. "Cute sketches," she said coldly. "Maybe you should focus on cleaning floors instead of drawing fairy tales." The janitor, a quiet older man named Elias Rowan, simply nodded and lowered his gaze. But there was something in his eyes, something that made even the bustling office feel still for a moment, something Miranda didn't notice at all. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of hidden potential, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us share more stories that remind the world compassion can change everything. Voss Tech's headquarters was the embodiment of modern success. All glass walls, steel beams, and automation. Robots served coffee. Holographic screens floated above desks. Every corner spoke of ambition. Miranda had built this empire from scratch, or so she believed. Known for a ruthless intelligence and unshakable drive, she had a reputation for perfection. To her, every employee was a cog in her creation, every mistake a weakness to eliminate. And the janitor, just another invisible presence keeping her floors polished. She never once wondered who he was, what he'd done before, or what he carried inside that old notebook. Elias Rowan was 62. His hands were calloused from years of labor, his back slightly bent, but his eyes, gray and gentle, still held a kind of calm intelligence. He arrived before sunrise every morning, sweeping corridors and cleaning labs while the city outside was still asleep. Most employees ignored him, a few greeted him politely, but he had grown used to invisibility. It gave him time to observe, to think, and to draw. Every break, every lunch hour, he'd sit quietly in the maintenance room, opening that same old notebook. Its pages were filled with sketches of circuits, structures, energy grids, and handwritten notes full of complex formulas. He never told anyone why he kept doing it. Miranda's company had hit a wall. Despite her growing success, their latest clean energy project, codenamed Sol Stream, was failing. Investors were pulling back, engineers were frustrated, and her board of directors had started whispering about replacing her. The technology that was supposed to revolutionize sustainable power had one fatal flaw. It couldn't hold energy long enough to be viable. Millions had been spent, and every test ended the same way: flickers, short bursts, and failure. Miranda was running out of time. One afternoon, during a particularly tense board meeting, Miranda's assistant informed her that one of the janitors had accidentally left behind a maintenance log in the R&D lab. She frowned. "I don't have time for this," she muttered, but the notebook's name, Elias Rowan, caught her attention. She remembered that name, that old man, and the sketches she had once mocked. Annoyed yet curious, she had it brought to her office. She flipped through it again. This time her eyes lingered. The sketches weren't random doodles. They were intricate, precise, and familiar. The energy grid designs, the pattern of circuits. It resembled the core structure of her own Sol Stream prototype. Her breath caught. How was that possible? She turned another page. There, scribbled in faded blue ink, were notes on thermal resistance in microcells, and a formula correcting the very problem her engineers had been struggling with for months. She stared at it, disbelief turning into awe, then confusion. Miranda called her chief engineer immediately. Within hours, they ran simulations using the formula from Elias's notebook. The results were shocking. The design worked perfectly. It stabilized the energy flow, extended retention by over 70%, and fixed the overheating issue entirely. The room fell silent as the success rate climbed on screen. "Who came up with this?" the engineer whispered. Miranda didn't answer. That night, long after everyone had left, Miranda sat alone in her office with the notebook open. The lamplight caught the wrinkles of its pages, the small notes in the margins, the faded ink. She turned to the back page and froze. A newspaper clipping was taped there. "Vostek Industries receives $10 million in seed funding. Miranda Voss, founder." Below it, written in delicate handwriting, were the words, "Sometimes the seeds you plant come from the roots of someone else's dream." And beneath that, a signature, Elias Rowan. Her mind raced. Why would a janitor have her company's blueprints years before she even started? The next morning, she asked her HR team to bring Elias to her office. He came quietly, holding his mop, unsure why he'd been called. She offered him a seat. "Elias," she began, her tone strangely soft, "where did you learn to draw designs like this?" He looked down at his hands and smiled faintly. "I used to design energy systems," he said, "a long time ago, before everything changed." She leaned forward, trying to understand. He continued, voice calm but distant. "I worked at an old research facility in the late 90s. We were developing modular energy storage systems, much like your Sol stream. My designs were never taken seriously. The company shut down after investors backed out, and my work vanished in legal dust. I lost everything, my position, my house, even my patents. So I started over, became a janitor, but I couldn't stop thinking, couldn't stop dreaming." He looked at her with tired eyes. "So I kept writing, sketching, refining, just for myself. That notebook is all I had left of who I was." Miranda's throat tightened. She remembered mocking that notebook. She had laughed at the man who, without knowing it, might have been the true mind behind her company's breakthrough. "Why didn't you show this to anyone?" she asked quietly. He smiled again, almost sadly. "Because nobody listens to a janitor." The words cut deeper than he could have imagined. For days, Miranda couldn't sleep. Every time she looked at her company's logo, her pride twisted into guilt. The designs that built her empire, the foundation of everything, had roots in this man's forgotten brilliance. She realized that while she had been celebrated for vision and innovation, someone else had been sweeping the floors beneath her dreams. Weeks passed, and Miranda made a decision that stunned everyone. At the next company-wide meeting, she stepped onto the stage and invited Elias up beside her. The crowd murmured in confusion. She held up the notebook. "This," she said, "is where Vostek began, and it didn't start with me. It started with him." The room went silent. She told them everything, how she found the notebook, how Elias's designs had solved the company's greatest challenge, how brilliance can hide in the most unexpected places. Her voice trembled near the end. "True innovation," she said, "doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it's sweeping the floor right beside you." The applause was thunderous. Elias stood frozen, overwhelmed. Tears welled in his eyes as the employees rose to their feet. For the first time in decades, someone was seeing him, not the uniform, not the broom, but the man behind it all. Miranda announced that day that Elias would be appointed as senior technical consultant, leading a new division focused on sustainable innovation. The board supported her decision. Investors returned. The company's reputation soared. In the following months, Vostek's new model, based on Elias's principles, became a global sensation. Clean energy grids powered rural schools, hospitals, and entire towns. People called it the Rowan Revolution, but for Elias the greatest reward wasn't fame or money. It was seeing his dream, once mocked and forgotten, light up the world. Miranda changed too. She became a different kind of leader, one who listened, one who saw beyond status. She often visited Elias's lab, sometimes just to talk. He'd tell her stories about his late wife, about how she used to encourage him to keep drawing, no matter what the world says. Miranda would smile quietly, realizing how much wisdom she had ignored all her life. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the glass towers, Miranda found Elias sitting by the window of the lab, his notebook open again, still drawing. She asked softly. He chuckled. "Always," he said. "Dreams don't retire." That night, Miranda wrote a note of her own and slipped it into the back of his notebook when he wasn't looking. It read, "Thank you for building what I could only imagine. You reminded me that success without kindness is failure in disguise." When Elias found it later, he smiled and placed the note beside his wife's old photo. The light from the sunset glimmered off the page, warm and golden. It was daytime still, but somehow everything seemed brighter. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every engagement helps us bring more real, inspiring stories of humility, compassion, and redemption to life. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Would you have given that notebook a second glance? Because sometimes the world's greatest blueprints aren't written on paper. They're written in the hearts of those who refuse to stop believing.